Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. This is your old pal and head honcho Matt Orozco from Macabre Daily here, and I am beyond excited to be joined by today Brian Skiba, who is the director and correct me if I'm wrong here, Brian, but also the composer behind Guns of Redemption, the forthcoming Western film from Shout Studios, which will be out in select theaters on March 7th, as well as on VOD. So thank you, Brian, for being with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And no, you're not wrong. I did do the music as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, but no, really appreciate you having me on. It's fun.
Well, I was watching the credits. I'm like, wait a minute, am I having a stroke? Am I seeing the same thing twice? And I saw your name pop under music composed by, and also a fellow Arizonan like myself. So, uh, before I know we don't have all the time in the world here, Brian. So I'm just going to start with some questions. First of which is, what's aside from some of your filmmaking that you've done, what is your personal relationship and history to the Western film?
I've loved Westerns since I was a kid. The good, bad, and ugly. I actually had an old vinyl of the soundtrack, and my mom gave me, and it's one of my earliest memories. I remember sitting there and playing the vinyl over and over and over again, and I just loved the score of that, yeah, and so, as kids, we would always play Cowboys and Indians, and we would do all that kind of stuff. So, and I've always, and then when I got into filmmaking, it was always like, yeah, I want to do a Western, but the opportunity to do Westerns is very small. There's probably six or seven a year that are made well, and so, it was like. So it just didn't develop until, recently. And then it was like, I think with Sheridan, really pushing the genre forward, it allowed us to kind of jump into it. And it's been great, man. I love the genre. It's fun because it's a genre that actually existed in humanity, but you're still creating, I wouldn't say fantasy, but it's definitely another world that we used to live in. So
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of fan. We're definitely playing a little bit of fan fiction in the modern Western, but that's not a bad thing.
yeah.
And I think you're right. With the prevalence now of things like Yellowstone and the various offshoots of it, and then of course people going backwards and looking at film over time, it's definitely poised that the Western might be making a bit of a comeback. Would you say that that's accurate, or you think we still have a ways to go before we're seeing, more Westerns hit the theaters?
I don't think we'll see theatrical westerns. I think with Costner's Horizon, unfortunately, the fact that it
Yeah.
didn't perform, I don't think the studios are going to take any chance at putting anything big in theaters. But I do think it's going to be absolutely all over, the video on demands, the streamers, those kind of areas. I think it'll find a home there and always be there. And just like any genre, it's cyclical. It'll be real strong for 2, 3 years, and then it'll die out for a couple of years, and it'll come back. But I unfortunately I just don't with Horizon not performing in theaters like it just didn't. So I just don't see it going there I don't see it going there, but I do see it going very strong into streamers. I see it going very strong into home entertainment.
Yeah. There's always going to be a home for the Western. It's just where, I think, is always the question. And thinking about the genre as a whole, it's often characterized by kind of these dusty, desolate landscapes, the frontier range, if you will. But there's a lot of lush greenery in Guns of Redemption. In fact, it's almost kind of very much kind of a green film in the visual look of it. But where did you film for locations, and how long was the shooting schedule?
We filmed in Kentucky and we shot 15 days. Well, it ended up being, I think, 17 because we had a couple of cover days due to rain and stuff like that. But we were in Kentucky, southern Kentucky. We actually this is we I had just shot another Western there with Nick Cage and Stephen Dorff and Heather Graham that comes out later this year. This one actually was my third Western. My second Western still hasn't come out yet, but this one, it was funny because that one was more desolate. Like Kentucky during the winter, there's no greenery. It's dead. Everything
Right.
had a great look to it. And then we started prep on this one and spring hit and literally everything went super green. It was just like you just kind of had to accept it. It was like, all right, well, I guess it's going to be a green movie. and and but you know, I based the movie in Kentucky. It was the story was perfect for that area. It wasn't a dusty Western because it was all about these Civil War guys, and it took place, you know, late, you know, 1870. So it was like, you know, that's the that was the area. It fit. I mean, story wise, it was perfect. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better location, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, I'd love to go do a Dusty Western, believe me, I would. But for what it is, I thought this one was a very beautiful film. So.
No, I think it adds some diversity to the genre's kind of aesthetic, if you will. You know, it just makes it stands out in a good way, providing that kind of more green backdrop. Um, and you know, I know that, you know, on the composing side, how is that, you know, what's your process like when you're thinking about this, both serving the pro roles as a director, but also as a composer? Because personally, I always like to think about a song and like what movie, what kind of scene could go with it. But I'm curious to know, what is your kind of thought process going through this? Are you hearing the sounds as you're directing, or is it kind of more of an afterthought that you go through and watch the film with fresh eyes and ears?
No, I mean, going into this one, I knew I wanted to do a spaghetti Western soundtrack. I mean, and that's you know, and I was going through my head, my Rolodex of people that I have doing scores, and I like to use Richard Patrick a lot, the lead singer of Filter. Excuse me, but he was already on the other Western, and I just kept thinking, I was like, man, I can't give this one away because if somebody doesn't get that sound right, somebody and it's the sound I've been listening to all my life. It's like I've been listening to the soundtrack all my life, and just nobody's going to do it right. And so you know, I felt like I needed to do it myself, and so I convinced everybody. You know, I was like, hey, let me and they went along with it, and you know, and so it's really while I was on set, you know, it was, yeah, I was listening, you know, I was listening to those kind of, you know, those loops, the whistling loops, the classic kind of guitar loops, you know, those kind of things to kind of just feel that, you know, feel that genre as we're shooting, and then when we got into the studio to emulate it. So.
Yeah, you definitely captured some of those signature sounds. I don't even know what the instrument's called, but the one that sounds like a rattle, you know, that the, you know, whatever it is. But yeah, there's so many kind of iconic, what I'd say, sounds in there. And then, given this is, you know, you have three westerns, maybe you're in your own way making your own Man Without a Name trilogy. It's your own Leone, if you will. But um, you know, I want to just speak a little bit about your broader work in genre film as a whole. You know, you've been working in genre for, you know, a good part of your career, across different parts of it, from horror, action, westerns, you name it. What do you think that is that draws you to these kind of more genre focused pictures as opposed to something that's more, you know, dramatic or just kind of, um, I don't know what the good word for is, but non-genre, non-genre film?
It's what I love. It's my passion. You know, I mean, you know, I've done the rom-coms for television. I've done the dramas, so to say, and it just wasn't where my heart was at. And I could have kept doing them. I was doing two or three a year and making a decent living doing it. And it got to a point where like my heart was aching. You know, it was
Mm,
like it's not where it wanted to be, you know, and I knew the films that I wanted to make, and I know the films now that I still want to make, you know, and it is the genre pieces. It is the, you know, it's the grindhouse, it's the horror, it's the westerns, it's gritty action, you know, it's things like that that really attract me because I grew up, you know, every Saturday morning watching, you know, we got like three channels, but Saturday mornings was action theater on Channel 5, you know, and
right.
you know, I would turn that on and just watch, you know, old kung fu movies to Godzilla to whatever they were putting on. And, you know, it was three movies back to back. And I just remember how much that I just loved that. And so being able to now create films in that kind of genre is an honor. It's, you know, it's where my heart wants to be.
Yeah, I had a similar conversation with Steven Kostanski about, you know, what drives him to make the movies he makes. He's like, listen, there's a bunch of movies I used to watch that I always wanted to make my versions of, and now I'm just basically creating my own video store of my movies. And my last question for you, Brian, is just kind of a fun one. You know, if you were asked to program a double feature with Guns of Redemption, what do you think would make a great double bill?
Um, uh, oh, let's see. I think it would why am I spacing on the name? The Clint Eastwood movie where he goes into the town as the bad guy. You know what I'm talking-
Unforgiven?
No, no,
No,
Unforgiven. Um, God, I can't remember the name of it. What is it? Pell
uh,
Rider? Is that it?
might be it. I don't know if I've seen that one. I'm trying to racking my brain through all the different Eastwood westerns I'm thinking of.
Let's see. Eastwood, Western. Yeah, we can look all this up now. It's awesome. Um, High Plains Drifter. That's it.
High Plains. Well, I've got one to add to my list because that's a blind spot for me.
Yeah, High
Um,
Plains Drifter is great film. It's a great film, but it's kind of, it's again, it's a bad guy who rolls into a town and they ask him to help him out, you know? And so I think it fits the genre, you know. I mean, very much Unforgiven too. Unforgiven's bad guy who's, it's a common theme, and I think that's what really attracted me to this story is again, it's kind of a bad guy who's does something good. So
Yeah, it's the classic anti-hero of a Western, you know, you have in Casper Van Dien's character. Well, Brian, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today and remind everyone that's watching this that you can go and check out Guns of Redemption for yourself in select theaters and also on VOD on March 7th from Shout Studios. And Brian, looking forward to the second and third Western you have coming out later this year.
yes, take care and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Brian.